This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Ashley.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Richelle.
And on this week's episode, Ashley is going to be doing the Kennedy curse.
Yeah.
And Richelle is going to be doing Canadian conspiracies.
Mm-hmm. I realized that most conspiracy theories came from like the US. And I was curious to know if there was any Canadian ones, and there actually are, and I haven't heard of some of them. So I'm wondering if you've ever heard of them. I doubt Ashley would have ever heard of any of them.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm interested to hear what the Canadians view as conspiracy. But
Me too.
yeah. The Kennedys, actually, there's a couple deaths that have some conspiracies behind them. So this is kind of the conspiracy episode.
Yeah, and it's funny because like when you first said the Kennedy curse, I thought that it was some like ghosty thing. And then as soon as I was announcing the topic, I'm like, oh, it's the Kennedy family. I know about this.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Like, I knew that they had a lot of bad luck. I didn't realize how bad it was until I was going through family member by family member. And I do have a possible curse starting point. But it doesn't ever like fully explain it. But anyway, we'll get into it. I'll tell you all about it.
Was Stanley Yelnats involved?
Was who?
Stanley Yelnats. Nobody understands that reference.
No, what's it from?
Holes. With it was a book called Holes.
Oh
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said Holes.
No, The Curse of Stanley Yelnats. If only the woodpecker sighs, the bark on the tree was this. I don't even know.
I've got to admit, I've never read Holes, nor have I seen the movie.
Oh, it's good.
I've heard it's really good.
I've seen the movie.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Shia LaBeouf wasn't crazy. Yeah.
No. Actually, Dustin and I watched the Peanut Butter Falcon the other night, and it was actually pretty good.
Did you just say the Peanut Butter Falcon?
Yeah.
Is that like the semi-autobiography of his life or whatever?
No, I don't know what that one's called, but this one's with the main character has Down syndrome.
Oh.
And then he like teams up with him to bring him to like this wrestling academy that he wants to go to, so he like escapes the nursing home he's being held at. He meets up with Shia LaBeouf's character. And it's like a funny little like buddy movie.
Cute.
So funny.
But yeah, the Peanut Butter Falcon ends up being his like wrestling name.
Oh, cute. That's awesome. Peanut Butter Falcon. Fun. I don't have a segue from Peanut Butter Falcon into the Kennedy curse, so here we go.
Yeah. Let's slide on into it. There you go. You can slide on
in. Yeah. So I got my sources from historyhit.com, Wikipedia, Spare Change News, and Irish Central.
Ooh.
So the Kennedys. Some call them America's royalty. Some know their dark, sad history and call them America's cursed family. The Great Kennedy Dynasty starts way back on September 26th, 1849, when two Irish immigrants, Patrick Kennedy and Bridget Murphy, got married in Boston, Massachusetts. This marriage gave birth to Patrick Joseph Kennedy, who basically started the modern Kennedy family that has captivated America for so many decades.
That's cool.
Yeah, this gets a little history heavy, Jessica, so I think it'll be right up your alley.
Awesome.
So Bridget gave birth to 4 other children before Patrick, but even these Kennedys weren't immune to the Kennedy curse. Before Patrick Joseph Kennedy was even born, he had lost an older brother to cholera, and 10 months after Patrick's birth, he lost his father to the same disease. Since Patrick was the only surviving male, he was given a full education because, fuck women at the time.
Yeah.
So anyway, his mom was like, okay, well, I'm a single mother of 5, an Irish immigrant. What am I going to do? This badass bitch bought the store that she worked at, and the business took off.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it expanded from a stationery and notions store to a grocery and liquor store. And let's be real, there's money in liquor.
Oh yeah.
So at the age of 14, Patrick Kennedy dropped out of school to work with his moms and sisters. And then in 1980, in the 1918, we're in the 1800s. In the 1880s, he used his earnings and help from his mom, who at this time was like pretty wealthy, to buy a saloon.
Ooh,
Yeah.
more alcohol.
Exactly. He then went on to buy 2 other bars and a whiskey importing business, giving a really good foundation for the Kennedys' long-lasting wealth.
Wow.
So their wealth started generations before, but this like really helped it.
Mm-hmm.
And he even started the political legacy that the Kennedys are known for. On November 23rd, 1887, Patrick married Mary Augusta Hickey and had 4 children, one being Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., who followed in his father's political footsteps, becoming the 44th United States ambassador to the United Kingdom.
Cool.
Joseph married Rose Kennedy, and together they gave birth to 9 kids.
Ew.
And they created the generation that really started people wondering if this family was cursed. So
no.
Let's talk about all the tragedies that befell each Kennedy.
Okay.
So the most famous of all these children was John F. Kennedy, who was the 35th president of the United States and was famously shot and killed at the age of 46 on the grassy knoll in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
On my birthday.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Aw, sad birthday legend. This created one of America's biggest conspiracy theories, Richelle. Some of them were, was there one shooter or 2? Was there a magic bullet? Was it the mob? And according to some QAnon followers, he's still alive and is coming back to run with Trump.
Oh, in like his 90s? Like,
I even doubt that.
Yeah.
do people not like realize that people age?
Yeah, I guess not.
I mean, Trump is fucking almost 80 years old. Like,
yeah.
But all of that is a whole nother story that maybe we'll cover on a different episode. In high school, actually, one of my favorite things that I remembered was in my social studies class, we studied his assassination and we put on a mock trial. And I was the prosecution, so I had to try and prove the magic bullet theory. It was really fun. So I watched the Zapruder film like a gajillion times.
What do you mean by magic bullet?
Well, so if they're saying that it was one shooter, the bullet path would have had to go in him and then make like a turn in his body and then go down and then make like another turn the way the like bullets were. And yeah, I can get more in on it. I'll do an episode on it. It's pretty interesting. All the, because, you know, then there's also like Marilyn Monroe that plays into it. It's quite a salacious story. So maybe we'll talk about that.
That would be fun.
So John's older brother, Joseph Jr., died at the age of 29 in a naval airplane explosion during World War II, and his remains were never recovered. Kathleen Cavendish,
You make potatoes? Is she the Cavendish potato lady?
I don't think so.
oh.
Kyle and I.
She's from PEI, so.
I was gonna say Kyle and I want to move to PEI because there's a place called Cavendish, and that's where they have the Cavendish Potato Factory.
Is that like a Canadian thing?
Yes.
Okay. I would say I haven't heard of Cavendish. I mean, I've heard of it, but like I wouldn't know what it was.
Like, I remember going there when I was little because of family PEI, and you like drive past a giant potato, man.
Oh, Cavendish.
They're so good.
Potato.
Cavendish potatoes are the best.
Oh, okay. So like tater tots.
Well, they make all types of different potatoes.
Like,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't think that's related.
Okay, that's sad.
She was the Marchioness. Yeah. I even wrote it in like how you would say it, and I'm still struggling. The Marchioness, but she's, yes, the Marchioness of Hartington. Okay. Kathleen Cavendish was the Marchioness of Hartington, and that's basically the female equivalent of a marquise.
Oh, cool.
So Kathleen died at the age of 28 in an airplane crash after her husband, whom she had only been married to for 4 months, was killed in Belgium while on active duty.
Aww.
Robert F. Kennedy was 42 when he was assassinated while running for president. His death also has a lot of conspiracy theories, such as there also being a second gunman, that maybe his security guard was the second gunman. My autocorrect changed it to funman. That the gunman was psychologically programmed to commit the murder and had no idea what he was doing. And there's also some weird, like, talkings about some lady in a polka dot dress that may have been working with the shooter. There's also a conspiracy that maybe the CIA was involved.
Weird.
But,
okay.
And one of probably the saddest stories for the sibling is that of Rosemary Kennedy.
Oh, yes. I think I was going to say, I talked about her in our original episode that we removed. Remember, I talked about St. Elizabeth's Asylum because that's where she was lobotomized.
Okay. Yeah. So she had a really hard life before she was even born. When her mother went into labor, she was having her at home back at, in the time that was pretty common. But because of the Spanish flu epidemic, the doctor couldn't get to her as quickly as he needed to. So the nurse told Rose to hold her legs closed, which kept Rosemary in the birth canal for 2 hours.
What?
This caused her to have a harmful loss of oxygen, and it caused brain damage. And this became more and more apparent as Rosemary began to grow. She was not hitting any of her milestones, and at the age of 2, she still couldn't sit up on her own or crawl or anything like that. As she grew, her intellectual challenges became more and more evident, but the family was denying that anything was wrong with Rosemary. They didn't talk about it. Rosemary had trouble learning to read and write, and eventually the family sent her to a boarding school for the intellectually disabled. At the age of 15, she was sent to Sacred Heart Covenant, where she got one-on-one help, and she started to do a lot better. And they said, and the family gifted the school with a tennis court.
Oh.
But the family kept this hidden from the public eyes and even a lot of relatives. By the age of 22, Rosemary was struggling even more. She would often have seizures, and they said that she would fly into violent rages.
Aww.
After this, she was sent to several schools, getting kicked out, and she was finally sent to a Covenant school where she began sneaking out at night. And the nuns were afraid that she was sneaking out to have the sex.
Oh, no.
The sex.
Oh, no.
So the only logical thing to curb the sex was a lobotomy, guys. So at 23 years old, her father, without telling his wife, had Rosemary get a lobotomy.
Hold on. Something's not. She's 23 and they're mad that she's sneaking out to
possibly
bang.
Have sex. Yeah.
Well, isn't she at a covenant?
Yes.
That's probably why.
Yes, but she's 23 years old.
Yeah.
For God's sake.
Yeah. And he didn't tell his wife.
Yeah, but she's also 23 and might not have the intellectual properties of a 23-year-old. So that's probably why they're more stressed out about it.
Yeah. The doctor described the procedure as follows. It's pretty awful.
Yeah.
After Rosemary was mildly sedated, we went up through the top of the head, Dr. Watts recalled. I think she was awake. She had a mild tranquilizer. I made a surgical incision in the brain through the skull. It was near the front. It was on both sides. We just made a small incision, no more than an inch. The instrument Dr. Watts used looked like a butter knife. He swung it up and down to cut the brain tissue. We put an instrument inside, he said. As Dr. Watts cut, Dr. Freeman asked Rosemary some questions. For example, he asked her to recite the Lord's Prayer or sing God Bless America or count backwards. We made an estimate on how far to cut based on how she responded. When Rosemary began to become incoherent, they stopped. So like super scientific. Yeah.
Wait, so they didn't do the ice pick through the eye?
No, they didn't do that with her. And not surprisingly, after this, Rosemary got worse. She had the mental capacity of a 2-year-old after the lobotomy and could not walk or talk or use the bathroom on her own. She was then institutionalized. And at her institution, her dad built her a cottage on the grounds for adults who need lifelong care. But the family basically separated themselves from her. In fact, Rose, her mother, didn't even visit her for 20 years, and her dad never visited her.
That's heinous. Like, as if you can put somebody through that, especially your own child, and not acknowledge them, be with them, care about them.
Yeah. And none of her siblings knew about the lobotomy or knew where she was. The family said that she was reclusive, which is why no one in the press saw her. And it wasn't until their dad had a stroke where he couldn't speak or walk that he revealed to her siblings where she was. Wow. After this, the family slowly started to involve Rosemary again. She learned to walk again, but was never able to speak clearly. And she died at the age of 85 with her remaining siblings by her side.
Wow.
So, continuing with the family to the next generation, John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline gave birth to a baby boy in 1963, but he died shortly after. I believe they named him Patrick.
Aww.
John and Jacqueline had already had a miscarriage and a stillbirth. Ted Kennedy Jr., nephew of JFK, was diagnosed with bone cancer and had to have his right leg amputated. David Kennedy, son of Robert F. Kennedy, almost drowned when he was little, but his dad saved him. And the next day he watched his dad's assassination on TV. Because of this, he never really recovered. And he later overdosed on a combination of cocaine and prescription medication. JFK Jr. famously died in a plane crash in 1999 with his wife and sister-in-law. He was flying at night, and they believe he got confused between the sky and the water and crashed. Ted Kennedy's daughter in 2011, Kara Kennedy, died of a heart attack while exercising in a Washington, D.C. health club. And she had reportedly suffered from lung cancer 9 years previously, but she recovered with the removal of her lung only to have that heart attack. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s ex-wife, Mary Richardson Kennedy, died by suicide in 2012. Robert F. Kennedy's granddaughter, Saoirse, recently died at the age of 22 from a drug overdose. A year later, his other granddaughter and great-grandson died in a canoe accident. So it looks like the curse is still going through the family, generation to generation. So is this the story of a strong patriarchal family that kept his family from truths and taught them to believe they were better than everyone and to push themselves no matter what? Or are the Kennedys cursed? Well, there is a story of where the curse could have come from, and it starts in 1842 Ireland. During this,
before you do that, can I say something kind of controversial?
Sure.
I would think it was more of a curse if there was more similar deaths, but these are all very different deaths spread out over a bunch of time, and it just seems like a lot because they're a very public family.
Could be, yeah.
And so it's all over the place. But I think if you were to look at like the average family,
I think that there's just so many of them that died so young. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally get what you're saying, Richelle, for sure.
Okay, but now tell me about the curse, because that's way more interesting.
So in 1842 Ireland, it was rough. There was a lot of people being kicked out of their homes by landowners. So they were homeless and starving. There was a lot of poor refugees. But in a tiny village, Thomas Fitzgerald, his name was Honeyfitz, who was, and I think I did this right, but if I did not, someone correct me. He's JFK's great grandfather, made a fortune when he discovered a treasure. Fun fact, the town that he was in was so small and remote that it was the last place in Ireland to get electricity. Anyway, so the story goes that Thomas had a dream that there was gold buried in a place surrounded by mountains and lakes. Over the years, Thomas continually was searching for this place in his dream. He would go to fairs around the country to ask about this place, but no one ever knew what he was talking about. Then one day he was at a fair in Galway City and met, quote, an O'Malley man at the old bridge spanning the Corrib.
An O'Malley man.
I said, excuse me, what in the Irish is that?
Yes.
So an O'Malley man, it was just the name. It was like saying like the Smith man or whatever.
Yeah.
And the Corrib is like a river that goes through a city. So this man who was from Orid, I think that's how you say it, knew the place he was speaking of, but didn't know where the gold was buried. So Thomas settled in Orid, this place where the guy was like, yeah, this is the place, and asked everyone around him about this treasure. Well, nobody knew, but they would search, and he kind of had like a little band of helpers to search. And one night in 1838, he and a group of neighbors found a dying woman on the road. They took her to a herdsman house and laid her by the fire. When she woke up the next morning, she saw a black pot hanging in the fireplace. On the pot was inscribed, "The other side of the tree is just as good," in Ogham, which is a language of an Irish language. And she could read it, the others couldn't. So this led Thomas to believe that the treasure was buried under an old hawthorn tree. And they kind of explained like, so he had seen this pot before saying the same thing. And I don't know if he had seen it in his dream or how it connected. It was kind of confusing how it connected. But either way, this sentence made him think, okay, the treasure's under this old hawthorn tree. And it was.
Oh.
He found a ton of gold coins that he did share with the O'Malleys. But these coins were said to be unlucky and that anyone who touched them would run into bad luck.
Oh, no.
It was said that the gold coins brought bad luck on everyone in the small town, including O'Malley's wife, who poisoned herself. And it said, quote, there were 40 houses before the famine, which were mostly hovels, and a landlord's house. Then on the night of the big wind in 1839, so this was after they had found those coins, all the houses were blown down. The whole village was later wiped out, and the famine in Orid went from 40 houses to 1. There are only 4 houses now, which were built in more recent times. And so that's like the bad luck that the gold brought on the town. And then he said the money that took Fitzgerald and several other people to America took all the bad luck out of Orid and went with them to America. But why is this treasure bad luck? Where did it come from? The only thing they can say is they think it may have come from a Spanish ship, a shipwreck from the Spaniards and washed up on shore. But they never really could say why it was bad luck, just that it was bad luck. And that's where most of the Kennedy fortune comes from. So they believe that this treasure, if it were to be cursed, that's where this curse would come from. And that is the story of the Kennedy curse.
So cool.
Yeah. And there's a lot more that like happened to the Kennedys that aren't deaths. Like one of the Kennedys was driving with a passenger and like they crashed into a river or something and he got out, but the passenger died. One of the Kennedys was accused. I'm not sure if he was charged with rape.
What?
Yeah, there's just like a whole bunch of other things that have happened with the Kennedys that would just be more along the lines of like bad luck. Like, I mean, not the rape, obviously that's your own damn fault.
Yeah.
But like the other things, you know, where like if these bad luck coins followed them to America, maybe.
Yeah, I want to hear more about them because they're very fascinating to me.
Yeah, super interesting.
So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So we talked a little bit about conspiracies and my story, but I'm excited to hear about these Canadian conspiracies.
Yeah, especially to know if I've even heard of them.
Yeah.
So there's 5 of them.
Ooh.
And for my sources, I use mostly mysteriesofcanada.com article.
Ooh.
Because the writing is hilarious. But also a Snopes.com article, Karen Leibowitz for Medium.com, and Jonathan Vankin for Inquisitor.com.
Ooh.
So number 1, Tim Horton's coffee.
Ooh, I do know what Tim Hortons is. We have them in Michigan now.
Yeah, they are shit in the States.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, and they're pretty shit in Canada too.
But they're
honestly.
shittier in the States.
Oh, I liked them in Michigan.
Whether you regularly snag a double-double, do you know what a double-double is?
Mm-mm.
Ashley, if you
No.
were to like go through a drive-through and say, "Hey, can I get a medium double-double?"
I have no idea. I would think like a double cheeseburger.
No, coffee.
Oh, coffee. Okay. Well, Tim Hortons has food, right?
Yeah, but not
Okay.
burgers.
Oh, okay.
It's like two sugar, 2 cream.
Oh, okay. That makes more
Yeah.
sense.
Whether you regularly snag a double-double on your way to work or limit your consumption to the roll-up season, which is roll up the rim is like akin to like the Monopoly thing that McDonald's does.
Okay.
Kind of, where it's like a competition. Yeah, so you roll up the rim and then you get a prize or you get a free coffee or it says next time,
okay.
whatever.
But it's fucking stupid because it used to be you used to roll up the rim on the actual cup that you received.
Yeah, now it's an app.
But now it's an app. So if you don't have the app, you can't roll up the rim.
I think McDonald's switched to an app
Like,
too.
it's really awful. And like the prize is not even as good this year. And it's like some of the prizes were like 5 points. And it's like, oh, for Pete's sake, like that gets me literally nothing. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. If you're a Canadian Java junkie, chances are you're immediately familiar with Tim Hortons coffee.
Yeah.
For over half a century, Canada's favorite restaurant has supplied untold road trippers with their caffeine fix, warmed countless frozen fingers at outdoor sporting events, and provided the caffeic catalyst for many a friendly get-together. No do to boot it. Timmy's coffee is good. Some say too good.
Oh.
Conventional wisdom holds that the popularity of Tim Hortons' iconic beverage is attributable to its rich, full-bodied flavor, its reasonable price, and that's one thing. Like, they're getting up there.
They're getting up there. It's stupid.
Yeah. Like, you're not fucking Starbucks. Calm down.
Yeah.
And it's oft touted to perpetual freshness. That's like Tim Hortons like gimmick is like they write it on the pot like at the time and then it can't sit for like so long.
20 minutes. 20 minutes.
Oh, wow. That is fresh.
According to some, however, the widely held yet seldom spoken assumption just doesn't stand up to scrutiny. Although Tim Hortons undoubtedly makes a solid cup of joe, its brew is objectively far from the finest of its kind. Spend a week indulging exclusively in high-quality coffee from a local roastery, and your next cup of Timmy's will probably taste like mud. Yet that very same day, when 5 o'clock rolls around and you fancy an afternoon pick-me-up, it won't be an artisanal coffee you crave. For some reason, the only explanation for the irresistible allure of Tim Hortons coffee is that it contains some sort of ultra-addictive narcotic.
Yeah.
Some say that Tim's takes a page out of a Coca-Cola's old playbook and laces its beans with sprinklings of cocaine.
Ooh. I mean, it gives you a little kick you need in the morning, right?
Exactly.
Others whisper that the waxy coating that lines the interior of its paper cups contains trace amounts of nicotine. Too little to produce any noticeable effects, but just enough to get you hooked.
Yep.
So wait, is this separate theories or they think that the cup has nicotine and there's cocaine in it?
This like separate.
Okay. Yeah. So that is going to kill you.
Yep.
Whatever the case, many Canucks half jokingly surmise that there might be more to Tim Hortons coffee than meets the eye. The Tim Hortons special blend of coffee has been closely guarded from the beginnings of the chain and is subject to stringent quality assurance measures by a team of coffee experts located at the Tim Hortons head office in Oakville, Ontario. We do extensive testing and cupping of our coffee to ensure the highest quality standards are met, and our people can extend that quality right into the roasting process here in Rochester, said Paul House. We start with the best possible Arabica beans from various countries of the world to create our special blend and can follow those beans right through the roasting and packaging process. Because folks are willing to line up to purchase Tim Hortons coffee rather than secure their daily cup from another source, some people have begun looking for more sinister explanation beyond the obvious one of the coffee is really good, the donuts are fresh. No, they're not. And they're always open. The popularity of Tim Hortons coffee, according to the whispers, the beverage has been made so alluring through the addition of nicotine, MSG, or the maximum amount of caffeine allowed by the law.
I would like that.
In one elaborate version of the rumor, Tim Hortons patron suffers a puzzling and severe allergic reaction after drinking some of the chain's coffee. Only under duress and in instance on absolute secrecy does the Tim Hortons executive disclose to the treating doctor a list of the ingredients in their special blend. A list that reveals the presence of nicotine. Variants of the basic rumor assert it's not the coffee itself that's loaded with nicotine, but the chain coffee's filters, or that nicotine has been sprayed on the inside of the disposable cups. But Tim Hortons coffee does not include nicotine, MSG, an unusually high level of caffeine, or any similar additives. Just as the USA has its Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, to oversee the safety of commercially sold ingestibles, Canada has its Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Neither agency would permit the knowing inclusion of dangerous substances in a foodstuff vended to an unwary public.
I'm sure.
Nicotine is one of the most powerful poisons known. Though we normally think in terms of arsenic and strychnine when the term poison comes up, the truth is that nicotine is far more deadly. The lethal dose of arsenic for a 150-pound adult is 200 milligrams. For strychnine, 75 milligrams, but for nicotine, only 60 milligrams.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
Nicotine can and does kill even in relatively small amounts. Those who wear nicotine patches must exercise great care about the disposal of their used packages, lest children or pets come in contact with the seemingly spent aids and become deeply sickened or even possibly die. Not surprisingly, nicotine is not permitted as a food additive in either Canada or the US. As for MSG, although the FDA has designated the additive generally recognized as safe, many people claim to experience adverse effects such as headaches after ingesting it. So all consumables containing the substance have to be clearly labeled to indicate its presence. The CBC News program Disclosure conducted its own investigation, which including had samples of coffee from Tim Hortons sent to a lab for analysis. The results showed no measurable amount of nicotine and had on average less caffeine than coffee from either Starbucks or Second Cup. All right, number 2.
Oh, wow.
NHL bias. So of course, talking about
not the NHL.
The NHL.
Should I get Kyle in here to discuss? Give his opinion?
Get him in here.
Okay, I'll text him. Give me a second.
All right. This is for you, Kyle.
We have a special guest, Jessica's husband. Apparently, he really likes the NHL, and we got some NHL conspiracy theories for you, Kyle.
Because we have some NHL conspiracy theories for you.
NHL conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If there's anything that Canadians love more than Tim Hortons coffee, it's watching Hockey Night in Canada, a TV program featuring a live National Hockey League, NHL, games. Despite Canada's unbridled enthusiasm for its national sport, it's been 29 years since a Canadian NHL team won the Stanley Cup, the coveted NHL Championship trophy. There are currently 31. This might be outdated, so there might be more. I think there's like the Krakens came on this year or whatever. Teams in the NHL, and 7 of them, namely the Calgary Flames, the Edmonton Oilers, Montreal Canadiens, Vancouver Canucks, the Ottawa Senators, Toronto Maple Leafs, and recently resurrected Winnipeg Jets are Canadian. The rest are American. If the winners of the Stanley Cup were chosen at random, the odds that an American NHL team would win the championship 26 years in a row, it was 26, I just checked, it's 29 years now, would be around 1 in 500. Of course, the NHL championship is not a game of chance, and there are many factors which determine a team's likelihood of making and progressing through the playoffs. So what sets Canadian NHL teams apart from their American counterparts? Are the coaches of Canadian teams less competent than those of the American teams?
Probably.
No.
Just kidding.
No. Are the players paid differently? No. Do American teams have an unfair advantage in the draft? No. According to some, the only difference between Canada and the Canadian and American NHL teams is the sort of treatment they receive from officials during playoffs. For years, Canadian hockey fans have observed that NHL referees seem to favor American teams, especially during playoff season. Not only do the refs appear to be disproportionately tough on Canadian players, they also seem to turn a blind eye to a staggering number of American infractions. For example, during the third period of whatever year this was, first playoff game between the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs, Toronto's Nazem Kadri was suspended for the remainder of the series for cross-checking Boston's Jake DeBrusk, an incident from which DeBrusk was quick to recover. In Game 7 of that same series, at a critical moment in the second period when the series was on the line, Boston's Zdeno Chara sucker punched Toronto's captain John Tavares in the side of the head so hard that he fell to the ice and got away scot-free. Hockey fans may recall a similar double standard characterizing whatever year this was, playoff series between the Calgary Flames and the Colorado Avalanche.
You know?
I don't know the years, no, but I do remember the Toronto-Boston games, and I remember the punch, and I remember the body check that was preceded by a knee-on-knee hit. So, yes, there is certainly some questionable content for refs.
Why would hockey referees favor American teams over Canadian teams? Some paranoid Canadians suspect that they were pressured to do so by the National Hockey League, which has a financial motive to increase hockey's popularity in the United States. Securing the fanship of America's larger and wealthier pool of sports lovers would certainly allow the NHL to make more money off network revenue. Perhaps some say the NHL is doing everything in its power to extend the seasons of American hockey teams for as long as possible in an effort to spread the game throughout the land of opportunity.
The American dollar's strength doesn't hurt. That's
also
for sure.
true, the last few teams have been American, like the Vegas Knights were new, and now it's the Seattle Krakens. They're all American teams.
Yeah, Arizona is going to play for in a college rank or university rank of like 3,200 people. So it doesn't all look great down there.
I know hockey was really big where I was from at Michigan because we had the Detroit Red Wings, but yeah. I'm not really that into hockey. They're pretty big here. We have the
You're Nashville, right? Nashville Predators?
No, I'm in West Virginia, but the DC, what's the DC?
Oh, Washington Capitals?
Yeah, the Capitals. Yeah, they're pretty big here.
Okay, that's all I have for hockey. Bye, Kyle.
Bye. Thank you for your input. Goodbye. I love you.
Sorry, bye. Goodbye.
All right, next one.
Okay.
Justin Trudeau's dad.
Oh,
hottie with a body.
Not his dad.
Justin Trudeau. But someone messaged me and they're like, you like Justin Trudeau? And I didn't know if it was like a you like Justin Trudeau or like a ew. I was just like, I honestly don't know anything about his politics. I just think he's hot. She laughed.
Whether you love him or hate him, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau elicited a universal facepalm across the Western world when he issued his praise-filled eulogy following the death of Cuban dictator Fidel Castro in November 2016. Sure, Justin's father, former Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, was a personal friend of the one-time communist revolutionary, and Justin himself had met with the El Jefe 3 months prior to his end, but it says to his fini, but haven't the Holodomor, the Cambodian genocide, and the Great Chinese Famine taught leaders of the free world to think twice before showering their dissent-crushing, human rights-abusing, nuclear Holocaust-flirting communist counterparts with commendations?
Holy crap.
The Prime Minister's baffling public statement prompted many Canadians to take a closer look at Justin's relationship with the late Cuban leader. Almost overnight, a wild theory took form. Perhaps, some said, Justin Trudeau is really not Pierre's son at all, but rather the illegitimate love child of Fidel Castro and Pierre's wife, Margaret.
Whoa, no!
He doesn't look Cuban.
Yes, he absolutely fucking
He
does look like
does.
Fidel Castro. Look it up. Compared to his dad, he looks nothing like. He actually looks like Fidel Castro when you.
Well, I don't know
It's
what his
true.
dad looks like.
Not great, but he was a really good prime minister.
Oh wow, young Fidel. Oh, I kind of see it.
Yeah.
What was his dad's name?
Pierre Trudeau. Immediately, photographs comparing Justin Trudeau with young Castro began to circulate throughout the internet. Take away Fidel's scruffy beard and exchange his combat fatigues for a suit and tie, and the resemblance is truly uncanny.
Yep. They even did a side-by-side picture of it, and it is just wild.
Proponents of the theory noted that both Pierre Trudeau and his wife Margaret, the latter nearly 30 years Pierre's junior. Oh, just like you, Jeff.
Not as bad. It's only okay. We only have 16-year difference.
And I just saw a side by side. Listeners, you need to Google Justin Trudeau and Fidel Castro.
I don't know what's more alarming, the fact that Justin Trudeau looks like Fidel Castro and that Fidel Castro is like actually kind of good looking in his youth.
Yeah, good point, Richelle.
So anyways, both of them were notoriously promiscuous, and that Fidel became fast friends with Pierre in the 1970s, eventually serving as his pallbearer at his funeral in 2000.
Wow.
Various fact-checking websites in response to the rumor were quick to point out that Justin Trudeau was born on Christmas Day, 1971, 5 years prior to Pierre and Margaret's famous 3-day visit to Havana in January 1976. And that, barring a secret rendezvous, there were no plausible opportunity for the alleged affair to have taken place in the time frame required for Justin to be, and this is what the article says, El Hijo del Comandante. Perhaps the strangest denial comes from the Canadian government itself. In February 2018, the Diaz-Balart rumor prompted the Canadian government to publicly deny the story. Federal governments in Western civilization do not deny urban legends. The story clearly got under the skin of someone in Canadian Parliament. Why would anyone in Canadian government be so sensitive to a mere internet rumor?
Because they're babies.
Because the story is perfectly plausible. Pierre was an aging playboy who had fathered no known offspring despite being sexually promiscuous his whole adult life. Having recently become prime minister, it suited him to get married and demonstrate stability. He evidently wanted a family because that's exactly what he started. Sperm banks barely existed back then. If an infertile old man wanted to have a family, his wife had to do it the old-fashioned way.
Oh.
Margaret was a 23-year-old wild child who liked doing it the old-fashioned way. She had not finished doing drugs or sowing her wild oats. She was clearly attracted to men in positions of power, even some who were old and unattractive. If Ted Kennedy met her qualifications as a sexual partner, Castro was bigger, stronger, thinner, handsomer, and more powerful. We have a Kennedy connection.
Ooh.
From the photos, it seems obvious she was attracted to him. And that's true. If you look at pictures of them, she's like always got like both of her arms around him. Like,
really interesting. Yeah. I had no idea about their connection with the Castros.
I know, it's weird. Today, we might remember Fidel Castro as an old man, but he was one of the most impressive people in the world back then, especially to fellow Marxists like the Trudeaus. He forcefully disposed a brutal dictator with a band of ragtag rebels. He turned Cuba into a Western world's first Marxist country. He beat the Americans in an armed invasion by personally commanding the battle in a tank. He survived CIA coups and assassination attempts. He outlived 2 Kennedy brothers behind those attempts. He was smart, charming, and funny. He was 6'3" strong and an athlete who sported the frame of an American football player. He looked like he could beat up any other world leader, much less any competitor for Margaret Trudeau's attention. He was full of bravado, confidence, and masculinity, and smoked cigars like a baller. Why would Pierre Trudeau choose anyone else to be the biological father of his children?
Interesting.
Thoughts on that one?
There's so many. It's awesome.
I know.
They look so similar. I can't get over how similar they look.
So the next one is Russian jets in Canada. So the Nahanni Valley, a mysterious region hugging the junction of the Northwest Territories, Yukon, and British Columbia, where in the early 1900s, prospectors searching for a legendary lost gold mine routinely lost their head. Back in summer of 2018, while interviewing an authority on the Nahanni Valley named Frank Graves, the author of this piece learned yet another mystery endemic to this infamous vale in northern Canada. During an expedition to the Nahanni Valley in the summer of 1965, Mr. Graves was informed by the local RCMP that Soviet fighter jets were often seen flying through the region. Frank elaborated on this phenomenon in a contemporary letter to his mentor, Ivan Sanderson, writing, "Some people, and notably a high-educated white man who has lived in the valley most of his life, remarked to me quite casually one day that enormous airplanes quite often came down from the north and sometimes fly so low in good weather that he could read their large markings even without his binoculars. Besides numbers, they bear names or identifications in the Cyrillic alphabet. Some of these he had tried to copy down, and on showing them to another educated old-timer who had also seen these planes for some years, he learned that a priest from Ontario had them translated and that they were Russian, and standard markings for a certain series of overfly planes known to the Canadian authorities.
I like how they had to specify that he was a white man so that he could be trusted, you know?
Of
Yeah.
That's so
course.
stupid.
I have asked around, but I never heard of such planes being spotted anywhere else. So why are these Russians so all fired interest in this crazy valley? And crazy it is, and in all kinds of ways I later found out. Chillingly, recent news suggests that Russian violation of our northern airspace might not be some bygone exercise of the Cold War. On January 26, 2019, U.S. Air Force and RCAF fighter jets were scrambled to escort 2 Russian bombers that had ventured too close to Canada's Arctic coast. Even earlier in 2016, Russian long-range bomber planes flew just off the northwest coast of Canada on November 6th, the same day that 28 Russian jets and bomber planes were intercepted over the Baltic Sea.
Oh.
Canadian F-18 Hornet fighters are among the NATO jets that intercepted those planes over the Baltic. But the Russian bombers also put the F-18 pilots at work closer to home, as the Russian bomber planes were caught in what Canadian defense officials believe was an information gathering mission. 2 Canadian F-18 Hornets scrambled to intercept a pair of Russian Tupolev Tu-95 bombers flying in international airspace over the Beaufort Sea off the Canadian coastline in North Alaska in the Arctic Ocean. The Canadian jets intercepted and visually identified the Russian bomber planes, according to a statement from the Canada's Defense Ministry. Until recently, and at least since the end of the Cold War in the early 1900s, Russian bomber planes and other missions off the coastlines of Canada and the United States were rare, said a Canadian defense official, speaking to Canada's QMI agency, a Montreal-based news organization. Since 2007, NORAD fighters have conducted intercepts about 5 times per year in the US or Canadian air defense identification zones. Such unannounced operations by strategic bombers near the US and Canada are unwanted, provocative, and potentially destabilizing. I repeat, for all the Russians listening in intelligence, it is unwanted. We don't want it. It is provocative. And it is potentially destabilizing this country of Canada, which doesn't need any more destabilizing at the moment. So please.
Oh, no.
And finally, the Shag Harbor UFO.
Ooh,
UFO.
I inhaled my spit when I started to say ooh. I got so excited. I don't even like aliens that much.
What?
I just got really excited for some reason.
Wait, you don't what?
She doesn't like aliens.
Yeah, I'm not like a huge fan of like the alien stories or like the UFO stories.
Well, you
Racist.
just fucking wait till the day they come for you, Ashley.
Yeah,
And you're gonna
Ashley.
be
Then I'll be a
changing
big
your mind.
fan.
Speaking of mysterious flying objects, no list of Canadian conspiracy theories would be complete without a nod to the UFO of Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, and the alleged cover-up surrounding its subsequent investigation by the Canadian military.
Love Nova Scotia.
On the eve of, you'll love it even more after this. On the eve, welcome to Nova Scotia, where we have beautiful trails and UFOs. On the eve of October 4th, 1967, in the tiny fishing village of Shag Harbor on the southwestern tip of Nova Scotia, dozens of witnesses saw an unusual pattern of yellow lights flashing in the night sky. At approximately 7:15 p.m., Air Canada Flight 305 pilots Captain Pierre Charbonneau and First Officer Robert Ralph were flying above Quebec about 180 miles west of Nova Scotia. Everything was perfectly routine until they noticed something trailing their plane. They witnessed a massive rectangular-shaped object, orange in color, gliding through the skies. Trailing the rectangle were small orange orbs that seemed almost like a tail to this main object. The pilots watched with growing concern for several minutes when suddenly there was some sort of explosion near the rectangle. A large white cloud was left behind, sporadically changing colors from red to blue. 2 minutes later, another explosion occurred, leaving behind a similar cloud of colors. The pilots watched in amazement as the small orbs swarmed around the rectangle and, along with it, descended into a thick cloud cover and disappeared out of sight. Both pilots, visibly shaken, reported the incident when they finally landed. After approaching from the east, the lights hovered over the harbor for some time before plunging down into the water, producing a bright flash of light and a loud boom suggestive of an explosion. Initially fearing that an airplane had crashed into the harbor, several witnesses scrambled to get a better view of the crash site so that they could accurately relay its position to local authorities. Instead of finding the wreck of a downed aircraft, however, the witnesses met with a strange sight, a pale yellow dome of light floating atop the water surface. Several young fishermen informed the local Mounties of the incident, and in no time, a rescue operation was underway. By the time the RCMP arrived on the scene, the dome was heading east along the surface of the water, leaving a trail of sparkling yellow foam in its wake. The policemen watched as the mysterious object disappeared into the night. A subsequent Mountie investigation failed to turn up any bodies or debris at the crash site. Suspecting the mysterious object might have been some sort of secret Soviet military device, the Royal Canadian Navy immediately flew in a team of divers to scour the site for anything out of the ordinary. Like the Mounties before them, the Navy divers.
Diapers.
You didn't drink. The Navy divers were unable to recover anything of interest. At least that's the official story.
Oh.
Local rumor has it the Navy divers did recover a component of a mysterious craft on the seafloor, which they wrapped underwater and brought to surface in secret. According to UFO researcher Chris Stiles, who tracked down and interviewed a number of the divers in the 1990s, one of his informants claimed that the Navy investigation at Shag Harbor was nothing more than a charade conducted for the benefit of the locals and any foreign agents who took interest in the case. The Canadian military, which diligently monitored the Atlantic Northwest for Russian submarines, knew early on that the mysterious object that crashed in Shag Harbor had actually moved northeast to the waters of Shelburne, Nova Scotia. The Canadian Navy conducted another diving operation near Shelburne, which it kept secret from the public. During this covert retrieval operation, Navy personnel discovered two large crafts underwater, one of which appeared to be lending assistance to the other. Before the Royal Canadian Navy could conduct a thorough investigation of the crafts, a Soviet submarine entered Canadian waters, apparently in an effort to locate the mysterious objects. While the Canadian cruisers on scene departed to intercept the submarine, the strange craft slipped away, ascended to the surface, took flight, and disappeared into the sky. Could there be some truth to the diver's incredible tale? Did the Royal Canadian Navy really cover up evidence of a UFO crash at Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia? Perhaps we'll never know for sure.
I mean, I definitely think that if there was like UFOs, the government would 100% keep it from us. But like to get all governments in on that, I don't know if they could all do that.
I don't know. It's very much reminiscent of like the Roswell incident, though.
Somebody should do that story. That sounds very fascinating.
I have an alien story that you will love.
Okay.
And I know you will love it because it's just fucking ridiculous. But it is so like amusing that I know you'll love it. So
Which one?
I'll do that. The guy that painted all of the aliens that would come to have sex with them.
Oh, I'm excited for that story.
And he
my gosh.
has all of these paintings, and he 100% believes.
I love that. I'm very excited to hear that. Oh,
and like
goodness.
one of them is like a weird woman in a balloon. She's got like long hair like the Grudge, and the other one's like a praying mantis man.
Oh gosh.
Creepy, especially with the body movements involved in that. Well, thank you for that story.
Yeah, that was great.
I knew some of those conspiracies, but not all of them. But dang, Fidel Castro and Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, I've never heard that. That's crazy. Does anybody have any jokes? I'm looking for one right now.
Yeah.
What you got?
How was the Roman Empire cut in half?
I don't know how.
With a pair of Caesars.
I have a one. Why couldn't the pony sing a lullaby?
Because he's a little horse.
Yeah, because he's a little horse.
Why did George Washington have trouble sleeping?
Because he could never lie.
Yeah. Really though?
Yeah, they always said that George Washington never told a lie.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, I doubt that's true, but that's what they
Yeah.
say.
How did King Louis XIV feel after completing the Palace of Versailles?
He took a sigh of relief.
Baroque.
That's for
Baroque.
sure. Well, if you want more of us lovely ladies, you can find us at historiesandmysteries.ca. We are also on Instagram and Facebook, Histories and Mysteries Podcast.
And if you want to rate and review us, that would be super wonderful. You can do it on Spotify and you can do it on Apple.
Yay.
And we just want to say that we really appreciate all of our new listeners.
We do. We love you guys. You're the best.
Yeah.
And what's the coolest conspiracy from where you're from?
Oh,
Yeah,
that'd be
I
cool
want to
to
hear some more Canadian ones. So
Yeah.
That would be fun.
And all of these suggestions that Richelle makes, you can post on our social media or email us at historiesandmysteries515@gmail.com. Well, we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week.
Bye.
Bye.